you kind of get lessons from everything you do in life, I honestly believe. And the lesson I took from it was that it made me want to become a buyer's agent. So I would never do what he did to me to anyone else.
This is Property Investory, where we talk to successful property investors to find out more about their stories, mindset, and strategies. I'm Trident Formula, and in this episode, we're speaking with young property investor Sam Gordon. He began his property investing career at a really early age, and we delve into his background with growing up on a farm, his passion for soccer and how that led him to a professional soccer career, how his property investing journey started, and much, much more. Sam Gordon is a property buyer's agent and also property investor, and has been running his own agency for the past 12 months. We learn about what a typical day looks like for Gordon.
I'm a bit of an early riser. I used to be part of the kind of 5 a.m. club. I beat that these days. So I get up at 4:59 every morning. And I go and train every day. I'm a bit of a fitness fanatic. I love that. So so I kind of start my day that way. And then usually I'm home by about 7. And then I pretty much spend my entire day sourcing, the exact properties that my clients need next in their portfolios. These kind of range from anything from your standard sort of, bread and butter, below market, strong cash flow, high growth deals, right through to high cash flow, like really high cash flow plays, and your manufactured equity deals as well. So I'm kind of out there networking with all that sort of stuff, trying to get as many good deals as I can for my clients. And then obviously on the same, at the same time, talking to my clients, working out exactly what they want and strategizing with them as well.
Gordon gets up early and he's able to get so much done within that short period of time in the morning because of his ability to plan.
As soon as I get up, I actually spend the first 15 minutes of the day kind of setting out my day. It's kind of a weird ritual that I do. I kind of jot down everything. I kind of wake up and I'm wired like straight away, and I kind of just jot down everything that I want to do during the day. And then I literally go and train for at least about an hour and a half every day. And during that time, I can refine what I want to do during the day. So as soon as it kind of hits the 7, I'm back home, showered, and I'm just firing like straight into the day. So then by the time I hit 9, anything I kind of needed to get set up before I can start calling people, I kind of get that all set up. So then as soon as it's 9, I'm networking, I'm hitting up different people, I'm chasing up different deals, building and pest inspectors, brokers, everything, just trying to get on the ball all the way through. I pretty much just kind of run all day as long as I can and just get as much in as I can, really.
What time do you normally finish up for the day?
Some days I go right through to literally about 10 o'clock while I'm kind of crashing out. But it kind of depends what I'm doing. Mate, I absolutely love what I do. I don't see it as a job, really. It's a passion for me, mate. 18 properties in the past 10 years. It's just something I love doing. And then the fact that I can go out and help other people do the same thing and build the same sort of portfolio, mate, I love it. I literally will probably do it for kind of until I drop, I guess.
We delve into Gordon's backstory and he shares with us about where he grew up.
I grew up about 2.5 hours south of Sydney in the Southern Highlands. It's a bit of an agricultural hub down that sort of way. It's actually quite a beautiful area. And I grew up on a farm with my family. Like we all kind of worked the farm from a pretty young age. And my parents are very, very hardworking people. They kind of worked 7 days a week for as long as I can remember. And it was a cool environment to kind of grow up there and kind of be on the farm, not being a city slicker sort of thing. You just kind of growing up, working on utes, working on motorbikes, and doing all that sort of stuff. So it was a good upbringing.
Living and working on a farm at an early age takes up a lot of time, and we learn about his interesting treks to school.
It was 2.5 hours each way. I used to catch 2 trains and a bus into Sydney. I went to a sports high school in Sydney called Westfield Sports, and I was there for soccer. And I was pretty keen on my soccer back in those days, and it was a pretty competitive school to be at. So yeah, I used to leave. That's the thing. I'm kind of used to the early mornings. I think I used to get up at 4:30 and catch it was about a 5:10 train from the Highlands to get me up there, and yeah, it was different, but it kind of, I guess, bred something a little different into me as well.
He could have gone to his local high school, but wanted to follow his dreams and was given the chance to attend a prestigious high school by his parents.
They gave me the opportunity, the decision to make for myself I was pretty keen into soccer. I think back when I was kind of, at that sort of age, I was always playing 2 or 3 age groups up, and the opportunity wasn't going to be there to play play at the level I wanted to play at down in the Highlands. So my brother and sister both went to quite good schools down here, and I had the opportunity of going to a fairly good school down here, or to kind of trek it up and go to the old Westfields. But it was good, mate. I loved it. It was when you go up there, you train every day. I was playing in the New South Wales Premier League at the time as well, so we used to train 3 to 4 times a week, game on the weekend, and then in school we used to train 4 days a week as well. So it was pretty full on, but I loved it.
The high school Gordon went to was a sports-focused high school, and we learned how it was different from a normal high school.
It still had all the subjects you kind of would normally go for, but it saw sport as an additional subject that we used to do outside of the standard curriculum. So the way our school was, it was quite a big, about 2,000 kids in the school, and what they had, the juniors, the kind of 7 to 9, we used to train in the mornings. I think we start at 7:30, finish at 9, and start school after that. And then as seniors, we used to start school earlier, but then finish earlier and train after school. So it was actually a really cool setup the way they did it, and it was a good experience. I did love it there.
So you mentioned you also played in the New South Wales Premier League as well. And at what stage was that? Was that during high school or after high school?
I was playing it during high school as well, so they've got like a juniors level there, and like truth be told, the New South Wales Premier League is pretty. I think the only one that probably comes close is probably the Victorian as well. They're pretty good down there too, and it's there's a lot of really good players there. And I think I signed my first grade contract. I left school at 16. The travel was just kind of killing me when I kind of went into those HSC years in year 11. So I left school at 16 and signed my first grade contract then, and it was an awesome experience. Played for some really, really top clubs at the time. And
we find out about what signing a contract for a junior soccer league means and how it works.
Once you turn 16, you can sign pro contracts and essentially start getting paid. So like what they normally do is they kind of try and pick the cream of the youth coming through, and if they get them on a pro contract, they kind of typically will keep them at the club for a while, because they gave them, they kind of typically gave us our first shot, and so that's where they try and sign guys up and try and keep them on for the long term. And it's essentially, I guess if you're a little more in tune with, the NRL or something, that's like the youth systems where they pull the younger players through. And I guess this was a little before the time of, it was before the time of like the A-League youth systems. I think they brought that in when I was maybe around 21 or 22 or something like that, because it came in just after I would have been eligible to go for it. So it's essentially the same thing. Now they've got like the National Youth League, which is where they kind of pull the players out of that to put into their first grade teams.
The contract that Gordon signed provided him with a platform to do what he loved.
I was still working full time, so it's kind of it's not as kind of full on as you think it would be at that point. You kind of just train 3 to 4 times a week and you play on the weekend, but you train in the nights after work. Pretty much everyone had jobs. There's very few people that would have bothered or would have been able to live on what it was, especially people with families and stuff. For me, it was, to tell you the truth, coming from the Highlands, the contracts I used to sign back then, mate, they just used to cover my fuel pretty much. It wasn't until I started getting a little bit older, I think around about 19 or 20, that's when the pay started getting pretty decent, and yeah, I started actually banking a bit rather than just covering my fuel costs.
Normally, on average, from your experience and seeing everyone around, how long do people usually stay on a club for?
It's so dependent on the player and the club, because if a club has a good run, I remember I played for Sutherland Sharks. I had 6 seasons there, and Sutherland Sharks, they were a great club. I absolutely loved them, and a lot of players stayed for a long time at that club. But then I left Southo, I think when I was maybe 19 or 20, and struggled to find a club that I really fit in. Well, I had a hip surgery. I had a hip operation back at that age, and it was a bit of a struggle for me breaking back into different first grade teams. So I was just kind of in a bit of a struggle period there, and I jumped around clubs a lot. So I'd gone from 6 years straight with Southo, and then I think I played at the Wolves, So I think I went to Berries. I had a couple of different years around there. Still in New South Wales Premier League, and then I went down to the Illawarra Premier League, where conversely the money is actually pretty good, and you don't have to train quite so much, so you can focus a bit more on the career side of things as well.
He decided to leave high school and immediately began to help out the family business until he knew what he wanted to pursue.
I actually jumped on with the family business. They were looking for someone at the time, and because I left about a third of the way through year 11. It was a bit too late to jump into one of those schools, a bit too late to try and find myself a trade. So my boy just said to me, look, why don't you just work here for till the end of the year, and then maybe jump on a trade or go into another school, maybe go back and do year 11 and 12 again. I'm reasonably smart, but I'm not like a huge academic. I don't love studying. I never saw myself going to uni. So, by the time that year kind of rolled out, I was looking at either doing the trade or staying with the family business. But I would have been taking about a pay cut down to about a third of my wage if I had have dropped back to a trade. Which, looking back, the trade off at that age is massive. You may as well go and do the trade. And if I could have gone back and told my younger self, I definitely would have gone back and probably been a chippy. Would have been pretty handy in the real estate game. But no, I stayed in there, and to tell you the truth, mate, I worked there the whole way through until I kind of hung up the tools and started the buyer's agency.
Working on his parents' farm, it taught him about the value of hard work and how to be successful.
They pretty much were the premium agricultural stock feed you could get in the country. It's pretty much the best stuff, and that's what we used to work really hard on. My dad's like an absolute perfectionist, and the stuff we used to produce, the results we used to get were crazy. So conversely, you get paid really well when you do something really well. So it was kind of a cool learning curve doing that side of things as well. It was a bit different, very different. I've actually never, haven't really met too many people that are in stock feed manufacturing. But yeah, it was a different thing. It kind of got the hard work side of me down pat, because it was pretty labor intensive job.
Nothing was given to his parents, and Gordon explains how they were able to build their farm from the ground up. When
he bought it, it was originally a rabbit farm, like a dying rabbit farm. When he and my mum, they moved down from Sydney, they actually lived over in the Sutherland Shire, and they did quite well. They bought their first house, and it was kind of back in the boom days, and they bought their first house, and it doubled in 3 years, and they sold it down and kind of had enough to come in and buy this farm. And my dad's a mechanic by trade, and so he built this mill, feed mill himself. He went and bought all the different parts. They didn't have that much money. He went and bought all these different parts and built this mill up from scratch, and kind of was able to produce his own stock feed, his own pelletized feed for these rabbits, and grew it into, I think at the time when he sold it, it was the biggest rabbit farm in the Southern Hemisphere. It was pretty cool.
As with any other job, he had to start at the bottom, but then eventually worked his way up in the business.
I started just pretty much as a labourer. When I first left, they kind of just needed an extra labourer there, and I was kind of doing a lot of the helping with the production side of food, and I just worked my way up as different people kind of either left or they weren't willing to step up to new positions when we were kind of going through a bit of growth. I kind of moved my way up into kind of packaging and distribution, and then logistics side of the business, and then I kind of was going out and actually doing sales for the company as well, trying to source new clients and stuff too, to have different avenues to sell it down. So I just kind of worked my way the whole way through it, and it was a bit of a different experience, I guess.
The family business had an impact on Gordon, but there was a moment that pushed him down the property investing road.
My parents were never, to tell you the truth, they've never had an actual investment. They own the farm, and they've got a holiday home down the south coast, but they never really went out buying investments. I have a couple now that I've helped them with, but it was kind of what it really was. What got me into it was when I was about 18, 19, I saved up about 20 grand, and I wanted to go out and buy a Toyota Supra. I was obsessed with Supras, and I came very close to buying a couple, and my dad was a mechanic. He'd go along with me. He just picked these things apart just so I wouldn't buy it. and then he eventually was like, "Look, mate, I think you should look at buying yourself your first home instead. Put your money into it." And I'd always kind of thought about it. One of my big idols is Harry Triggerboff. And always, you always hear about how many he's got. Yeah, every year it goes up like a few hundred units or something that he's accumulated. And I honestly love the guy, man. He's an inspiration. And I remember from a very young age hearing about him and about other really successful investors that had accumulated all these properties. And I thought, oh, how cool to be to own all these properties. So it was kind of when he kind of pushed me in that direction, I got a little bit obsessed with it and started doing all the research. And then I've always been a bit of a bargain hunter, so then I'm out there like talking to people and trying to find the best deals. And that's kind of that that's really how I got into it. Him giving me that little bit of a nudge, and then my normal obsessive kind of nature, just getting in there to get the best thing I could, I guess.
We delve into Gordon's first property purchase and what he learnt from that first experience.
Funnily enough, I was 19 at the time when I did it. And it was just after I'd had my hip operation. And it was funny because all I could really afford in the immediate area was a unit, where I was looking. So when I first looked, I looked down in Wollongong, which is about an hour and a half south of Sydney. It's a satellite city right on the coast, and it's quite a nice spot. And all I could afford was a unit. So here I am with this bung hip, kind of hobbling around after this surgery, trying to go up these walk-up blocks, like 2- and 3-story walk-up blocks, shuffling up these stairs. And but I'll tell you, it was a good experience. I don't know if I got a good price because the agent felt sorry for me or what. But no, that was pretty cool. And that was pretty much the nuts and bolts. But I just went out and talked to as many agents as I could, and it was funny. I kind of realized from a young age you had to try and ascertain what something was worth in a broad sense in a market, what something was worth to be able to identify what's cheap or what's below market, what you're making money on your way in from. And I actually did quite well at it, and I reckon I bought even on that first one, I think it was about 25-30K below market when I bought that one. So I guess I've always kind of had that so much ability, but the want to buy something cheap. Like I said before, I've always been a bargain hunter, I guess.
Gordon runs through some of the numbers on that first property and the inspiration behind what he decided to do with it.
Market value on this thing would have been around about 300 grand, I reckon. And it was in original condition. It was a 1995 unit. It was a 3-story walk-up, and I paid 275,000 for it. And I pretty firmly believed it would have been worth about 300. And it was kind of good because I was looking for my first thing. I wanted to do a little renovation project. I think it was back when the block's pretty big now, but it was back when the block was huge, and I used to watch it, and I wanted something I could get my hands a little bit dirty on. So that was kind of my first deal, first little purchase, and then I renovated that. I think it cost me all up. It cost me about eight grand to reno that, and I kind of actually, I didn't rip the kitchen out. I put all new appliances in. I reconfigured the kitchen a bit, but the carcass was still pretty, the carcass of the actual kitchen was still pretty good. And I just kind of, looked into how I could, I guess, tart it up a bit. And I used like high gloss enamel paints and stuff, and new door handles. And this thing looked like a brand new kitchen. And it was actually pretty cool. And I think in the end, I lived in it for about a year with one of my good mates, and then I ended up renting it out. So I paid 275. I think it was about an 8 grand reno into it, and then rented it out for 340 a week. That one, which wasn't with the type of investor I am today, that definitely wouldn't have made the grade, cut the grade. But it wasn't too bad. For a first investment, I definitely didn't stuff up at least.
With 18 properties currently in his portfolio, we find out about where most of these properties are located.
All throughout Australia. I've got one particular, I kind of call it my patch, that for both myself and my clients, I do what I call manufactured equity deals. So duplexes, subdivisions, wholesale land and builds and stuff like that. I've been investing in that area since I was... I think I've been there for about 7 or 8 years now, and I know all the agents. They know if they got a good deal, I'll buy it. So it's the one area in New South Wales that I still invest in today. It's Sydney's pretty well cooked, I guess, but it's the one area I can still always make really good money in that market. And then outside of that, I've got a lot of investments in both Queensland and South Australia, and I'm looking to possibly diversify a little bit more. But I'm pretty confident in both those markets, all three markets really, because I still hold quite a lot of stock in New South Wales as well.
Out of 18 properties, how long did it take you to accumulate to those properties?
I bought the first one at 19. I did the second one. See, this is the kind of thing. If I wish I knew. I wish I knew now what I. Sorry, I wish I knew then what I knew now, because if I'd known that I could have refinanced out my equity, I would have gotten cracking a lot sooner and kind of built up a lot more. But when I was 22, I did my next one. That was a wholesale. I got the land for a really good price. I built on that, and that's when I kind of realized I could pull money back out of a deal and put it into the next one. And then I kind of went on I think I lived in that one for a little bit, and then that's kind of when I found out about being able to do the refinancing. And then I think I was 25, I bought two more. 26, this is when I started kind of ramping up. I think 25, I bought two more. I think 26, I bought four. And then I just kind of, it was consecutive kind of 3 or 4 every year until now.
Gordon has been building his portfolio for the last 10 years, and he shares a moment that he considers to be one of the lowest points throughout his property investing journey.
I've actually been really happy with every investment I've made. I'm a bit of a crazy when it comes to getting the deal right. It takes me, I wouldn't say ages to pull a trigger, but it takes me ages to learn a market back to front before I put my money or my clients' money into a market. I need to know it back to front. So I haven't really made a mistake in terms of that. My probably, I've not really spoken about this, my probably worst moment, my lowest point would have been, I had an idol growing up that I used to read about. I used to read everything he was in. And I think when I hit about 7 or 8 properties, he's a buyer's agent as well. And I went and met with him, and I just wanted him to review my portfolio and tell me what he thought. And he absolutely shredded me. He absolutely paid my portfolio out so bad, said I was doing terribly, and conned me into signing up with him as a buyer's agent. And his fee was a fully paid upfront fee. It was about 10 grand. And, over the next 3 months, he kept bringing me these properties, and I said, mate, what were you paying my portfolio out for? These are the worst deals I've ever seen. And I ended up, Tyrone, mate, I ended up doing my dough on 10 grand. I called him up one day, absolutely gave it to him, and told him not to call me back again, because it was very, very disappointing, for a guy that I grew up absolutely idolizing, to be completely honest, to kind of have that happen to me. That would be my lowest point, I think. But you kind of get lessons from everything you do in life, I honestly believe. And the lesson I took from it was that it made me want to become a buyer's agent. So I would never do what he did to me to anyone else. And, it's quite simply, you look at the way I kind of charge my clients. I charge a very, very small upfront fee because of that happening to me. If anyone wasn't happy with what I did, it's such a, it's a minimal. I've always said to people, if you're honestly unhappy with what I've done, I'll give you your money back, because I don't even present a property to my client. I wouldn't buy myself. That's just the way I operate.
On the flip side, he talks about a moment in his career where he knew that he was on the right track and everything seemed to fall into place.
The biggest thing for me, and it's something that I really focus on with clients as well, is recycling equity. I think honestly that is the biggest game changer we have as investors. Is the way I work with my investors, I have three different avenues I buy for them, but I always buy in below market. It is, as you said to me earlier, it's all about making your money on the way into the deal. If you make your money on the way into the deal, you can force a bit of value on top of that, and plus maybe have a bit of growth as well, which is what we're always aiming for. And then you can recycle that equity back out, essentially recycling back out the deposit and all the monies you put into the deal, and then go and put that into more. It's essentially a very repeatable and scalable process. Excuse me. And that's what we're always going for. And that's like that for me, when the first time I ever did that, which was actually probably not the first time, because the first time was Wollongong. So I wasn't able to pull too much money out of it. I think I'd put about 35 into it, and I think I pulled about 15 out. But when I did the buy and build, I think I didn't have heaps of cash. I think I maybe put about 45K into it. But then I was able to refinance. I think when I refinanced, I think I pulled out about 80 grand. And when I did that, I was like, was like, holy crap, like I just pulled out so much capital that I didn't even really have. And it was, then I could go and put that, what I did was I went and put that into positive cash flow deals. And I was just like, wow, like this is, you got to constantly making your money on the way in so you can pull it back out and keep going. And that for me is the big aha moment. And that's what I do with every deal.
Gordon dives right in and tells us about the strategy that he has found most useful when he has bought properties for himself and his clients.
I guess the strategy in terms of it, I've called this something, right? So what I use is I use something that I've called the Trident Formula. And essentially what it is I have kind of there's three different types of deals that I love to work with. And it's those bread and butter sort of properties we're just talking about. You're buying in below market, with strong cash flows, in solid growth markets with value add potential. They're kind of what I kind of call like a base, like a foundation property, right? And I add a bunch of them into the portfolio. But then it's doing the small developments, doing the little buy and builds or duplexes, small subdivisions, stuff like that. Even strata titling. I've strata titled twice. I've done strata titling twice on unit blocks, and it's honestly such a great way to be able to pull that cash out and keep going. And I think when you combine those two with really high cash flow deals, I'm talking stuff like dual occupancies, unit blocks, commercial properties. When you're kind of combining the three of those, right, which is essentially my trident, right? Like it's three different prongs there going at any one time. When you're combining those three things, it's almost like unstoppable because you're getting the cash flow, you're getting the equity, and you're buying it below market, so you can pull that back out. And it's just a continual process. And that's what I do. That's what I've done for myself, and it works so well that I was able to kind of model it into this formula, this strategy. And it's the same thing I use for my clients. And it's showing some really, really good results, and I'm pumped on it.
After explaining what his strategy is, Gordon shares a story where he has put his strategy to the test.
An easy one to think about, in terms of all three strategies, right? So my first one, kind of a bread and butter, a typical sort of one, I just call out the last one I've done in the portfolio. I bought in a property was probably worth about 215,000. It needed a little bit of work. And I bought it for 185,000. I went in there and I smashed out the reno myself. Did all the work. I did it it was a back-to-back 8 days. Each day was about 18 hours, I think it was. This was up in Brizzy. And I drove all the way up after work one day on a Friday, smashed it out for a whole 8 days straight, just back to back, and then I drove all the way back to work and started work the following day. But the thing was, what I did was I saved so much in labor that I think I did this reno. I budgeted it came in about $6,500. So all up, I think on this property I spent $191,500, and it got revalued at 260. I think it was 260,000, and it was renting for $300 a week. And this is in a growth corridor in Brizzy. And like that, adding properties like that into the portfolio, they're your foundation properties. That you can just add them in all day long because you can pull that equity out and go again. And then so what I did at the same time I was doing that, I also had a buy and build on the go. It was a dual lock buy and build. But so what I did was through in that area I was telling you about, where I have some really, really strong contacts, I got brought an off-market deal before it was even advertised. The agent rang me and said, look, I have a developer, he needs to shift a block like right now, and he said, look, what can you do for me? And this thing probably would have been worth at the time probably mid to high threes. 300,000, probably around maybe 360 to 380. I said, look, mate, all I've got is 250 grand to buy this thing. And he's like, mate, 250 grand is not going to get it. Anyway, we did a bit of bargaining, all the rest of it. And in the end, I picked it up it was 283,000. I did a build on it, a dual lock build. Anyway, all up, it came in at about 680,000. Combined rent on it is $980 a week, and it got valued recently at 950,000. And it took me about 12 months. And and so I think whatever that is, I think it's about $270,000 in equity, and it's positive cash flow. That thing is about $12,000 a year positive cash flow. So that's it's kind of it's deals like that. Like they're the ones, mate. This is my bread and butter. I love doing that stuff and getting out there and doing those sorts of deals.
It is important to build relationships with the people working in the property industry because you never know when a deal can just fall into your lap.
A lot of these deals, I think with what I buy, probably about 40%, I think I've worked it out at some point. It was around about 40% of what I buy is off market through agents that I have been dealing with for, I think I started buying in Brisbane and Adelaide going on 5 years ago. So, and I'm always in touch with them and whenever I go up there, like I've got some of these agents, man, I'm like, he's good mates with them now. Like I go out there and I go out with them on the weekends and stuff and go out for drinks and for a feed and stuff. And they're actually become good mates. And it's the same as the agents I got in my local area the area that I kind of invest in down this way, down south of Sydney. And it's the same thing, mate. That they know I'm a serious buyer. They know when I call them and I'm talking about something, I'm not stuffing them around. And a lot of agents, mate, for the sake of even an extra $1,000, they're just like, look, if it's done, I'll call Sam. He'll be able to flick it on to a client or do it himself. If it's a good deal. And it's honestly, mate, it's building those sort of relationships, those sort of connections that brings you the deals before they hit the market. Or they'll call you when something's been sitting on there for ages and the vendor's like, nah, this has been on there for 3-4 months. It was overpriced at the start and the vendor's just become realistic. It's like, nah, I just want to sell it. And they'll drop like 50 grand off what they were originally wanting. And they're like, well, if I call Sam, he's got someone that'll buy it today. And it's building those relationships and keeping in front of those people all the time. And to be honest, mate, like they're actually mates of mine now. Like I get on really well with these people. So they love being able to call me with good deals. So it's kind of win-win. Gordon prides himself on being able to talk and get along with anyone, and he shares a story where that ability came in handy. I've done a few renovations down there, and I've kind of done renovations everywhere that I've bought, but a few renovations. And when you do renos, and you kind of, it's good in a way being a buyer's agent, because when I go do renos, I'll go and speak to the agents and kind of chat with them and go and see a lot of different properties while I'm there doing different stuff. And it's kind of this, mate. It's honestly it's the same thing. You just build those relationships, and mate, I tell you, I don't know how I do it. I got these weird connections with people heaps early. There's this one place where I did a unit block, and a strata subdivision, and I renovated 4 units, and I got on really well with the building and pest inspector. Like it was weird, man. Like we were there for like 4 hours, just like chatting and carrying on and stuff. And it was like a 40-degree day. It was that hot. And he's like, mate, just come back to the house for an iced tea. I go back. His wife's like, who the hell is this guy? Like he apparently never brought anyone home, and from like a bloody job site. And I've gone in there, had the iced tea, had lunch with them, and then before I knew it, they were kind of offering me whenever when I was coming back down to do the renovations, that I could stay in the granny flat out the back. So I went down and smashed out a 3-week reno on this place, and I was just staying in the back of this guy's house. Gordon was able to develop his own strategy, but with an abundance of investors in the market, he's seen similar approaches. There's definitely people out there doing developments. I don't know if they're kind of doing it in the same way, because a lot of people that I know, they do one or the other. And I think what helps me enabling to do kind of everything is I've got those industry contacts now where people are kind of calling me. I don't have to keep my finger, like I do keep my finger on the pulse everywhere, but I don't have to keep my eyes on every location all the time, because a lot of people will bring me really good deals. And to be honest, I only really focus on 5 markets. So I've got my normal developing location in New South Wales, and then I have 2 locations in Brisbane that I buy and 2 locations in South Australia that I buy. And it works really well for me, because I only need to worry about those areas, because they're the areas that I really believe are going to grow. And so I just focus on those areas. And once the growth has come to those areas and they're no longer the right places to invest, I'll move on to another. I'll do my research again, find the area I think truly is going to grow next, and go and move that onto the next area. And then so I'm still only really spreading myself across 5 locations, so to speak. And honestly, mate, it's building those connections, building those networks, and just having people being like, oh, look, I'd prefer to call Sam than call anyone else. And, if I can bring it to him and he's going to buy it, and the vendor doesn't have to pay $2,500 in marketing, then that's a bit of a win-win for everyone, especially if they need to sell it quickly.
With such an impressive portfolio at such a young age, Gordon runs through how much it is worth.
Mate, I haven't run the numbers on the portfolio exactly for a little bit. I think in terms of value, I think it's around about 5 million in gross worth. I think I've got about 2 mil in equity in there last time I checked, and the positive cash flow that's what allowed me to leave the job and start the buyer's agency. The positive cash flow is up around about 60 grand a year. I think it's a tad under 60 grand a year at the moment.
After following his dreams of playing soccer at a young age and then moving into the family business on the farm, eventually he achieved his goals within the property industry and talks more about what is keeping him motivated.
I think I really just want to set myself up for when I meet the right lady and kind of get myself a family, build myself a family. I think I just want to be set up. I don't want to be I wouldn't say as hardworking. I think I'll always be hardworking, but so dependent on needing to work really hard as my parents were. And I think that's probably the biggest motivating factor for me. I saw how hard they worked all the way through to their mid-60s, until I kind of was able to give them a hand as well with some stuff, and they were able to kind of step back a little bit from work. And I think growing up with that looming over me, I definitely didn't want that. So I think the biggest motivator would be wanting to be able to set up my family going forward in a good way, and for us to be comfortable.
Gordon has a successful portfolio of 18 properties, but is not quite enough for him.
In terms of the accumulation phase, I think I might be, I wouldn't say I might be done, because I had a goal. I wanted to have 20 properties while I was still 29. I didn't want to turn 30 with under 20 properties. I still kind of want to pick up 2 more. But I think once I've picked up those 2, to tell you the truth, like most of this year, I've just been focusing on my clients. That's what I'm really excited about. I get these people come on board, mate, and either they've been burnt the way I was burnt back in the day, and they don't trust people, and then I can kind of flip that on its head and show them, for one, that I'm an honest guy, but that I really actually want to help them achieve what it is they want. And I think that's the thing. I think I'm a little more excited about that side of things, and in terms of that, rather than kind of looking at growing my portfolio much more at the moment. I'm pretty happy with where it is, and I guess, to tell you the truth, I wouldn't mind getting a commercial deal. I think I've been doing a lot of research into commercial lately, and I think maybe for those last 2 that I pick up before I call it a day for now, I think I probably wouldn't mind doing a commercial deal or 2.
He started accumulating properties at a young age, and we learn about whether he had any help along the way.
I've always been someone to kind of go it alone a little bit, which, if like looking back now, I probably could have done a lot better than what I have. I have done pretty well, but I think I probably could have done a little bit better if I had maybe looked to a mentor or to someone to help me. But to tell you the truth, mate, I spent a lot of time, especially probably through to about 25. I spent a lot of time reading, you'd probably know the 3 big mags that were back then. The 3 big property mags that came out every month. It's down to only one mag these days, but that was it, mate. I just used to pour over those. I read them religiously. I had the subscription to all 3, and literally when they came out, I read them back to front and learnt everything I could. And that was I guess I think that was where I picked up almost everything that I learned. Would have been through that stuff, just digesting as much as I could and then applying it as I saw fit. I guess different people are different, but like, I love listening to the podcast, man. I listen to most of the stuff you do as well, and it's a really cool way of, mate, that's what I do every time I drive somewhere. I've got the podcast on, listening to different stuff. But it's the magazines. I'm definitely with you there. Kind of being able to read it and looking at the numbers.
We delve into any book recommendations that Gordon has for us.
I was always a big reader when I was a kid, in terms of fictional stuff, but I can't really put my finger on any books I've really ever read that gave me too much. You know what? I guess back in the day, I probably read Steve McKnight's. He was probably one of the idols of mine. The 0 to 130 in 3.5 years, which isn't actually possible anymore with the way lending is these days. Even if you were able to find deals that good, you actually couldn't do it in that manner anymore. But that was a cool book, I guess, to read. But to be honest, Tyrone, it was all the magazines were as good as a book to me. There's so many different stories, so many different perspectives in them, and that for me was the big thing.
Most of the time, the best advice you can receive comes from the people closest to you.
The old boy, don't buy the Supra. that is it, man. Honestly, that would be my best advice I've ever received. That would be easily the best investment I never made.
Some of the most successful people in the world are creatures of habit. Gordon shares with us what routine he likes to do on a daily basis.
Two kind of things come to mind as soon as you say that. My morning routine that I was kind of talking to you about before, getting up at 4:59 and then just training every morning. It's weird, man. Like, most people would probably think, you'd get tired from doing it, but I get such a massive boost of energy from doing it. And literally I'll run all the way through till I crash every night and get up and do it again. And I don't know, that's probably, yeah, in terms of habits, that's probably the, probably the biggest one towards success. The other one that sprang to mind that I kind of mentioned was, I think I can read people, judge people very quickly. It's I didn't do that so much when I was younger. I think I got an inkling about what someone was like, or I got a gut feel, and I didn't back myself in trusting it. Whereas these days, I'm very quick to back my gut on my take of someone and apply that, I guess, accordingly. I guess that's kind of just more of a mental thing for me, backing myself in that regard, trusting myself.
He shares with us what advice he would give himself if he met himself 10 years ago at the beginning.
I would have kind of gone harder. I probably would have said to him, buy more in Sydney, pull out the equity and go again. Probably look to accumulate some different development sites or even dual lock sites and stuff like that. I just would have said go harder. Back yourself, go harder.
At such a young age, to have built an incredible portfolio like he has, there is plenty to look forward to in the future.
My journey in probably the next 5 years is probably going to be pretty much for my clients. Mate, I'd love to see who I could retire in a 5-year window. Property is a long-term game, but if someone came to me with the right, probably borrowing capacity and deposit level, I probably could bloody retire them in 5 years. But it's honestly, mate, in a 5 year, a lot of my clients though, what I have for them is a 5-year game plan of accumulation, and it pretty well goes close enough to achieving what they want. They've just got to then let the portfolio mature, and then probably throw in a few different little manufactured equity deals along the way as well. But honestly, mate, yeah, probably the next 5 years, personally, maybe try and pick up, like I said to you, a commercial deal or two. But then, mate, I just want to go full hog for my, all in for my clients and just see how well I can do for as many of them as I can. Help out as many people as I can.
The perks of using a property buyer's agent is that they're able to show you things that you didn't even realize are possible.
There's a lot of people that come to me and they think they can maybe only buy one or two. And I think it's flipping that on its head. Also, a lot of people don't realize the volume of properties you kind of need to be able to retire. It's not... definitely in my strategy, it's not one or two or three properties, that are worth $1 million to get through. It's building a foundation portfolio, like I was saying to you before, of maybe 3 to 6 really high quality, you're below market, strong cash flow growth sort of properties, building them, and then it's doing the other accelerated strategies alongside that, and then throwing in a foundation property every year or so as well. And I think it's when I actually put that on paper for people or talk about and explain it to them as to what we need to do, and that the way I show them how they can do it and how I can help them do that. When I've done that for people, mate, even just seeing in their eyes and they get their aha moments in that moment when they're sitting there across from me. And that's powerful stuff. And you see that, honestly, I can sometimes be a bit of an emotional dude, man. And when I see that sort of stuff, man, it makes it like I buzz. Hey, like I get so much energy from showing people what is possible. And it's cool because I'm not saying it as someone who hasn't done anything or maybe only bought a property or two. Like, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm confident in what I can do for people. And when they can kind of feel that and thrive off it, mate, that's probably the most powerful thing I think I get to experience.
Gordon talks to us about whether luck or skill has shown to be the dominant factor throughout his young career.
There's a lot of people that say you make your own luck and stuff like that, and you do. You have to position yourself in a market to experience the growth. But I think I got a little bit of luck in terms of where I am based geographically. If I was based in, Brizzy, Perth, or Adelaide or something like that, I wouldn't have probably, I definitely wouldn't have seen as much growth as I had in the probably first few properties that I bought that were kind of Sydney region based, and I got a lot of growth off them as well. But I also didn't kind of sit on the sidelines, just buy and pray. It's everything I've done and every deal I do, I'm always forcing value. So, mate, I would definitely say, I probably at least have had 20% luck, 20% luck because, but then there is a lot of skill involved in navigating the market and buying the right properties and the strategy, man, that Trident formula that I use, implementing that. It's all well and good to have it on paper. It's implementing it, buying the right properties, doing the deals and having them going all the time, picking up the high cash flow deals, all that sort of stuff. That's skill. That is, I may have been working on the farm for 13 years, but I tell you, for the last 10 years, that's been my second job. My primary focus all along has always been real estate, and it's in my mind, I'm a professional at it. I'm a professional investor, and mate, I love it.
If you want to contact Sam Gordon, this is how you can reach him.
You can find me online at www.australianpropertyscout.com.au, and then if you go on there, you can kind of fill in. There's a little info box there. We can book in a call and have a chat. And there's you can have a look at some different client deals and stuff that's been on there, as well as I'm on the socials as well. On Facebook, just search Australian Property Scout, Instagram as well. But feel free, if there's anyone out there you want to reach out to me and have a chat. I'm always willing to have a chat with people and see what they're hoping to achieve and how I can possibly help them. Little portfolio reviews and stuff like that, mate. I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you to property buyer's agent Sam Gordon, our guest on this episode of Property Investory. If you want to hear his full story, visit propertyinvestory.com.au.